Aloha. This is gonna be some horoscope talk, and I'll get right into it because this is right after the last video I did. And so I was asking myself about horoscopes, and I started asking myself first about Mercury retrograde. Like, what is this? What is Mercury retrograde in relation to the Earth Plane Experience, and and then that led to what are horoscopes, because this came from my questioning what earlier, like what planets and stars were, and as stars and planets relating to water, and Dr. Masaru Emoto's experiments with programmable water, or water that has this focus of intent. Like if you tape a piece of tape a word on the side of a bottle of water, when you freeze it, you'll see a different snowflake design, like a sacred geometrical design. And each design is different. Each snowflake is different relative to the intent on it. So each individual, I've related that to being each individual as a star, each individual as water, crystallized water, intelligent energy as a walking, living, creative being, which is the physical reality, earth plane experience representation of what a star is. Like a slowed down, we are like slowed down versions of stars, just like ice would be a slowed down version of gaseous water, or water. So that's where I was going with that. So that's kind of like the foundation to the next question was, if we are like water stars, if we are in perfect harmony with this experience as a whole, then all this stuff has to mean something. Like horoscopes have to mean something. There's a harmonic to it all. When you see the sun and the moon circling over the earth plane, when you see the sun affecting the plants and the trees, and our moods and the seasons and the animals' reactions to like seasons, and the indigenous dances that happen, and the connections of the indigenous peoples with the understandings of nature, and the connections with natures, and the connections with stars, and the connections with animals, as far as understanding the animal spirits, and those harmonics, and what that all means, and what this energy is, like long hair, as far as like antennas, and then like what headdresses mean when you have chiefs who wear headdresses, and when you have shamans who use certain plant lives. And these are all harmonics. These are all tapping into various layers of our experience, and it all has like a meaning, and spread out as a whole, like expanding it further into the whole earth plane itself, and how we have different vibrations for different people, and different, like horoscopes affect people differently. People act a certain way, people live their lives certain ways. When Mercury goes into retrograde, people feel a certain way. When the seasons change, people feel a certain way. Bears even hibernate for a certain an extended amount of time. And it's not as simple as just like how I'm feeling it. It's not as simple as just like the weather. Like, it has to be, there's something more to our frequencies, and what all this stuff means. And I was looking into the horoscopes, and you can see how this is split. I was thinking about this too, and I was going to ask people on here, if they could go into finding this, and I just clicked on it and I didn't realize. But as far as the horoscopes are concerned, I was looking at this and seeing this as an Earth plane, like flipping this as the Earth plane, and like over here would be like the west, and over here would be like the east or whatever. And then however the design is, I was seeing this as people, and these horoscopes as energies, and energies as people. And I was thinking like that's also like the medicine wheel. And in the south, there's like what is it, let me go back to it. In the south there's the earth, and in the there's earth, fire, water, wind, and fire. Or earth, water, wind, fire. And then the ethers that hold everything together. Like I'm just kind of like throwing all this stuff out there as far as relating directly to the people, because there are the elders of the north, and the children of the east, and the youth of the south, and the parents of the west, and that whole experience. And I was making a correlation between that and how horoscopes are designed, not just in the stars that we're seeing this, is that we see this, because that's how I was relating it, as if we are a reflection, and like as above so below, so we are a reflection of the stars. Then the horoscopes also exist down here within people. And it doesn't have to necessarily relate directly over to like locations on the Earth plane itself, but we do see it as existing within individuals, as far as like this harmonic, in some kind of way there's a balance. So if there's too many Libras in this certain point of time, and we need more Aquarius energy, or we need more Taurus energy, then that will be manifest into this reality through the birthing process. So, and since we're so separated and individualized, we don't see these harmonics within ourselves. We don't see these connections to the stars, but we have this basic ass understanding of what horoscopes are, and that's what astrology is. And then we just like kind of and even astrology is like the 12 signs of astrology, and this whole thing that you're not even taking into account. Like this is a version of astrology. Like the Egyptians had their versions of astrology, and the Inca had their version, the Aztec, the Maya, the Olmec, that everybody had their versions of astrology. This is the European astrology that we are referencing today. The whole thing could be thrown completely off, but my point being is that we can feel it. Like we are an expressions of, like there's a lot of people. It exists. So how does it exist in the Earth plane? And I wrote some stuff down in that question moment. But before that, because I'll just read it. But before that, I was kind of throwing some stuff out there as far as like what Mercury retrograde, or what any kind of astrological event takes place, because or an astronomical event that takes place. So like we see it as, that was my main question in the beginning too, was like people are seeing like this, or like Mercury retrograde, so Mercury is now going backwards. Like, well, okay, what the hell does that mean? Like, what if that's just a light up there? And also how I'm seeing it, represents an energy or a being of sorts, like a giant star amongst the other stars. So an energetic frequency that is usually going quickly forward is now going backwards. And that energy is affecting us in ways because stars are like birds flying through the sky. And oh man, if you're flying one way quickly and then you start flying the other way, at one point you could be going against the wind, and that shit could be difficult. So that's how I was seeing like what Mercury retrograde could be, but on the etheric level. And these different versions of who we are astrologically are affected in different ways. And these different ways react and respond in this kind of chaotic harmonics. And like I was saying in the previous videos, there's this free will to make this choice. So we have these choices that we can make as a response to the experience itself. But since we're so thrown out of whack and misunderstanding ourselves and our reality, our purpose, our meaning, and each other, we don't know what the hell is going on. We just call it Mercury retrograde, and these are the symptoms, and then that's it. Like, we don't have any fucking understanding on what this actually means on a creative space, like because we still see the stars and the planets from a NASA perspective, which is totally ass backwards, upside down, and to work against us. But like, they can't hide the so-called the energies of they can't hide the everything. So this stuff that has leaked out from like the occult and from stuff that used to get people burned and strung up and put on the rack because of, it's the back in the day in the medieval times, and that they wanted to have people so separated from the understandings of the harmonics in themselves that they would destroy people who understood these harmonies and didn't want to tell people this stuff. So it created all these systems of confusion and dumbed down the system, watered everything down, kind of like whitewashed everything. It was all whitewashed, and we forgot our connections to each other. We forgot our connections to the animal spirits. We forgot our connections to the stars and the this is pretty cool. Well, yeah, we forgot our connections to the harmonics as a whole. And when they were saying, oh, well, these are savages, these are indigenous people, they're savages, they in a sense said the entire harmonic grid system and your purpose and meaning is savagery, and your reality is all now about the European version of experience, the whitewashing experience, and anything else outside of that, you will get killed. So it was the fear program that got amplified, like the dark ages of, so this iron age of destruction, but it's coming to an end now. Anyway, back to just this understanding of planets and stars, and it relating to the meaning and purpose. So us having these stars and the connections to stars and emotion, that was my main point. This is these movements of the stars and the planets affect our emotion. So it's like emotion, E in motion. So like the energy in motion, intelligent energy in motion. We are this intelligent energy in motion, and this harmonics of the sun and the moon. It's not as just simple as the sun and the moon circulating above us to create this version of time. And this understanding of harmonics, it goes into the way the planets move, the way the entire system. So if we can understand the sun and the moon being one version of us understanding ourselves and time and energy as a whole, then the planets are another version, a closer version in a sense, a closer version to who we are, because we are those water droplets in the starry night in the sky. So each planet and each movement of the planet affects our motion, our action. And this is what I'm seeing more and more, is how the design is, as far as our purpose and meaning here is to either, are we going to get caught up in the egoic versions of the symptoms of this design, or are we and only react and respond to the symptoms of this harmonic, or are we going to find it in ourselves to be the space itself and make decisions that are coming from a higher purpose, a higher meaning, and an understanding of the symptoms and what it means within our harmonics that we have chosen at birth to experience from our horoscopes and all that, as what as an entire collective as a whole, like how it fits in the entire harmonics of this experience as a whole. So we are harmonizing chaos. That's what we are, living versions of harmonizing this chaos system. And it's like a harmonic chaos system. It's still a frequency. It's still a harmonic. It might be all over the place and here and there, but there is definitely a song being played that we call the Earth Plane Experience. And the leading characters are like the sun, the moon, the people, earth people, dolphins, starring between March or April and July. Mercury is gonna kick your ass. So like there's these whole versions of the plots during this experience. And we have the free will to choose the one of the two. We're gonna choose to either take this experience from the victim space or the empowered space. Like we're either gonna choose to be subject to the symptoms, or we are going to go with the flow. And we as being here for an experience, there is no right or wrong way, because you learn from everything. You can't be making all these decisions. There is no right or wrong way to do it, because there's no particular way to do it. Like if one person on one side of the earth plane is doing one thing, then there's a balance on the other side of the earth plane. If one Libra on one side is making a decision that is not reflective of their higher potential, then there's going to be a Libra on the other side of the earth plane that is making the decision within the Mercury retrograde that will balance out the entire harmonies of the experience as a whole. That's what I'm pretty much saying, just as an example purpose, because I'm a Libra. And then this, so it's really about experience, movement, action. And you can go even into like the masculinity and femininity, the feminine, the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So it's not just about the horoscopes and the planets and the air and the water and the fire and the earth, but you also have the energies of masculine and femininity that are also another balance. And that also goes into like the timing of stuff. So like if Jupiter does a certain thing, if Mars aligns with Saturn, and that's gonna affect like a masculine sort of timing or energy within the people, or some kind of energy. I'm not into astrology deep, but so other people are going to be able to see this more in a deeper perspective than I am. But there is definitely time is involved here too. So like, let's just say Mercury was a masculine energy. I don't know what it is, but if Mercury in retrograde is there, then that timing between like April and whenever August or July would be like a masculine frequency time frame, and then all of the people within this space will make a decision or be making decisions based upon that kind of energy. And there is no right or wrong way to do it, because it's you, the individual, who is you, like, in a sense, you're not really, you're this balances out with like bigger stories and bigger books that we can't even understand right now, because there's some jacked up shit that happens. People do some really fucked up stuff in this experience, which is where like the whole the system of checks and balances comes in, and accountability comes in, and where people understand is right and wrong comes in, and that goes into like how we check ourselves in an experience, how we grow ourselves within this experience, and then we are affected on a deep overall. Consciousness expands itself each day, each time, each fluctuation in these harmonics is a fundamental sort of expansion, and it's happening on the microscopic level and the macroscopic level, and we can't see it all at once. This is why it's so difficult to understand like life and death, and because we have been so focused on like the fear program of death and the disembalanced victimization experience to see outside of ourselves, and see with only our physical eyes and not understand the entire experience as a whole. What all this stuff means, and the timings and movements. So I'll end it right now, because I kind of just already spoke on this stuff, but I'll read what I wrote and then kind of end on that. So I was expanding upon like how the seasons affect are relating, or starting off with like how everything is relating to the experiential effects that we have by stuff like Mercury retrograde, and what else is all related to that. So that's where the mindset was when I started writing stuff down. So I wrote, seasons affect emotion. Weather affects emotion. The ions, like the rain. When rain affects us, there's an ionic level that we are affected by. Like rain, the smell of rain makes us feel a certain way. Like the smell of nature makes us feel a certain way. The smell of smog makes you feel a certain way. The smell of bullshit makes you feel a certain way. The smell of like a waterfall or flowers make you feel a certain way, like affects your emotion. So these are all part of the harmonics as a whole. Horoscopes affect emotion. Like, so that was what I was talking about earlier about the balances. Retrograde affects emotion. So all of these are emotional effects, and this is the motion in through time that is being affected by these harmonics. So seasons, weather, horoscopes, retrograde stuff, it all affects emotion. So it affects the motion of consciousness through the human experience. Motion is and expands consciousness over time. Motion is action, internal action. So motion, emotion is internal action, and the design influences action. But you make the choice, like with your expression of the allness, experiencing separation. You make the choice within this emotion, within this design, within time. So the choices made are not a result of the influence, but a result of your level of consciousness within the design. So your consciousness, you like I was talking about free will in the past, like you're making these choices based upon your level of consciousness, not based upon your influence of that's just the symptoms of the experience. So this is where this whole everything else comes in. So the design itself expands consciousness. So this is where I was going into seeing how these sub-layer artificial layers get put on top of this whole system. They take this the understanding of the system and then turn it into an artificial version, which is like capitalism, to say stuff like capitalism says nothing will happen without competition. So that's that whole bogusness of creating an artificial frequency on top of the organic harmonics to kind of mirror something to make it seem and feel a certain way. So they say like capitalism says nothing will happen without competition. So competition is a new frequency, but that's out of balance and self-destructive because it's meant to control and to hoard energy, hoard motion, hoard emotion. So without competition, which is a focus of the side effects to the symptoms of the creative design, not the intent of the design itself. So capitalism is like a sub layer of a artificial version of harmonics based upon the symptoms of the creative design, not the intent of the design. So just like reading stuff about Mercury retrograde is reading stuff about the symptoms of Mercury retrograde, not understanding what the energy and the motion of Mercury itself is in relation to light and our reflection of light as a whole. And then the next thing was your individual horoscope is a prescription for you and the collective adjustments within the design of chaos meeting harmony. So we individually are like prescriptions, individual harmonics of the collective design and like our familial design and our cultural design. Like you know how people are fitting together. You ever see like people, teams of people, groups of people growing up and living in certain ways. And like people in Oakland, like we have this harmonic, this dance that there's a lot of things that come out of Oakland because of the way we interact with each other. And a lot of the times we just don't give a shit. Like we exist outside of a lot of constructs, and that's kind of like the essence of Oakland. We've held on to our own harmonics, and which is why crack was installed into why the whole system gets installed of self-destruction gets installed in here by the control grid in order to stop those harmonics, in order to shut down those harmonic systems. And this happens in all over the world. these programs get installed to shut down people's individuality, people's creative space, which is why they take the arts and the music outside of schools, because it's too harmonic, it's too creative, it's too outside of the whitewashing, self-destructive program box of indoctrination. They don't want that to happen. So like Oakland would be like if the whole United States was a school system, then Oakland would be like the arts, or the just an example, not saying it's completely like that, but for understanding like the frequency of the people in locations and the effect people have on each other. This is what happens. So they make people fight themselves, and create gangs, and create systems where people create gangs and fight themselves. This is where the whole control grid of gangs and all that stuff comes from. Taking cultures, taking differences, and instead of seeing how they work harmonically, pinning them or making them fight each other, taking these colors and these forgetting about the harmonics of the entire bigger picture, but zooming in on the destructive natures of it all and having it fight itself within the system, instead of understanding the bigger pictures. So yeah, we are individual like scripts in a sense that are a part of the bigger thing. So like I was saying, as far as free will, the lightest of the light and the darkest of the dark, we make the choice to be whatever it is based upon our level of consciousness in this harmonic chaos sort of experience. And that's a beautiful thing once it starts to kick into gear the right way, instead of fighting itself the way it does now and killing each other and all this is ridiculous. So the choice, the next thing I wrote is the choice creative intelligent, choice in quotation marks, the choice creative intelligent makes within all of us is the act of free will to experience itself through separation. So in order to have an experience, source energy has split itself, for example, 7 billion times on this planet or on this Earth plane to have an experience with horoscopes and weather and animals and the sun and the moon and Mercury energy, Mars energy, the planetary energies and how they move and what they mean. It split itself into humanity, dolphins, giraffes, Mercury retrograde, the sun, the moon. It split itself, and then we are individual experiences making the choice to either be subject to the victim of an experience or be the empowered space of that experience. So experiencing separation from the darkest of the darkest separation, coming back to the realization of its purpose and meaning. So let me finish this. What I was saying. Within all of us is the act of free will to experience itself through separation. To separate is to forget. So to go, that's what I was saying, going into the depths of forgetting is the separation, which is why this control grid focuses so much on fighting amongst itself and separating each other, and putting the news out there. Why news and Hollywood and TV shows and all these celebrities are out there, they were to channel your energy into these artificial stars, to channel your energy into these artificial constructs of reflection, seeing you as another star, as another individual person, trying to be like a Beyonce, trying to be like a Oprah, trying to be and act like all these other individuals, and not understanding who and how you exist within in this, your purpose, your meaning, your star, your energy. So it's taking it and watering it down, watering down the entire cosmos to be out of harmonics and be subject to owners. So this shift is the ultimate separation, forgetting, remembering itself again. So this is what's happening right now by us realizing the Earth Plane experience, whether it's flat or whatever. The main thing that I see that is more important is realizing our creative purpose, our meaning, and the understanding of having a space in harmony, and what this means, and what how this all fits together, and then taking even further, going into the angelic stories of separation, going back to itself, like us being so far away, like humanity, like being born in darkness, being born in this experience that kills itself, that poisons itself, that destroys itself, that is so caught up in the symptoms of this destructive perspective that the babies of this system are destroying, are forgetting their meaning and purpose of life itself. So us coming back and seeing all this stuff as existing the way it is now, with the Earth plane and the harmonics of the sun and the moon, and now going into the planets, the light energy of the planets, is us remembering again. So going from the ultimate separation to the ultimate remembering, to become back to itself. So that's pretty much it. I'll leave it there. Yeah, thank you for joining me. And until next time, peace, love, and harmony.